So I'm very glad that I'm going last because I actually have a data is big oil, data is the new oil analogy right up there. So I actually really like this analogy. The most powerful part for me is the idea that data isn't something that we create, it's something that we extract, it's something that's there as part of another process. But what we do, I guess, is about extracting and refining the data into a final product. I'd like you to have a think about, I imagine that a lot of you here are involved with data somehow in your day-to-day lives, and I'd like you to think about where you sit in the production chain. Are you a prospector? Are you someone who sort of looks for new data and looks for things to tap into? Are you an extractor who aggregates and collates and records and transports the data? Or are you a refiner who turns data into sort of usable end products? Have a think about where you sit, and then have a think about where you sit as a user of things like Facebook and Google. Where do you think on that production chain you sit? So that's us over there as users of these data products. If data is oil, then we're the dinosaurs who didn't read the terms and conditions and wander into the swamp, and then sink to the bottom, and then become the oil. The point of the analogy isn't that we're dumb reptiles. The point of the analogy is that we're ingredients in the final product. And ingredients are generally passive participants in the process. So when we talk about a user-centric model of data control, when we say we should empower users to be the ones who control how data is used, what we're really saying is that we want this passive participant to become an active participant in the process. But here's the problem with that. It's a really long process, and the user sits on the very far end of it. It's like asking a dinosaur running around in the swamp, hey, are you happy to become petrol and plastic and Vaseline? It's a really difficult proposition for the dinosaur to make informed decisions about. It's very far removed from their own experience, and it's not obvious to them, and it's not even obvious to like the experts what the consequence of all of those things are going to be. But even if they could make those decisions, should they bother? So one of the big issues is that you got to ask, how much is the data worth? How much hassle is it worth? When we talk about data, a lot of the times we're guilty of talking about the value of data in terms of its street value, in terms of its value after all of this work has been done to it. But a lot of the value of that value of the data comes from the ecosystem that it's a part of, from being matched with other data, from the broad coverage of the data in terms of covering all the population, in terms of the algorithms used to get insights from the data, and really importantly, from the commercial infrastructure that is used to sell that data. So a lot of that value comes from the ecosystem, not from the raw data itself. And then when you divide that value in amongst all the individual users, then it becomes a really small parcel of value. And in that context, we're expecting users to play to use David's word, to play a custodian role over their own data, when actually the kind of value that they have control over is quite small. And so I think a lot of the discussion that's going around in sort of big data circles puts a lot of value in this idea of putting control in the user's hands, because it sounds really great. Like conceptually, it's a really good idea. But I think a part of it is that it avoids where the real dilemma is. The real dilemma is that we're trying to balance having better services versus corporate control of that data. That it's about, do we want to give all of this stuff over to Google and Facebook? But actually, a part of this process of pushing the user-centric model is about this belief that the user will make ultimately an efficient decision that is best for everyone. But I think that avoids a dilemma that maybe we do have to make a trade-off. Maybe we do lose something in this trade. And that, for me, I think the really big thing is that it's not necessarily a problem that can be solved at an individual level. That a lot of that stuff is actually about the broader impacts of that data.